Okay. I call this meeting of the Minuteman School Committee Public Budget Hearing to order. I would like a motion to adopt remote participation as written in the agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote, alphabetical order, beginning with Pam.
Pam Nurse Acton, yes.
And we're missing Sarah, so we go to Erica.
Erica LZ Bolton, yes.
Steve Ledoux, Concord, yes.
Ford Spalding Dover, yes.
Darlene Cabral Lancaster, yes.
Jeff Stuland Needham, yes.
Alice DeLucas, yes.
Okay, an opening comment. Welcome everybody to the Minuteman Public Budget Hearing. At this meeting, the administration will present their budget assessment proposal to the Minuteman community. Immediately after the presentation, we will accept questions from the public. This is a time only for public comment questions, not school committee member comment questions. That will come later. Since most questions will be directed to the administration, I will ask the superintendent to call on those who have questions. So if you have a question, turn on your video, indicate that you have a question, and you'll be called on at some point by the superintendent. Any questions directed to the school committee, if there are any, will go first to the chair, who will direct the question as appropriate, probably to Steve Ledoux, who is the chair of the Minuteman FinCom. The Minuteman FinCom, for your information, has recommended this budget to the full school committee for approval, which I hope will happen later today. After we close the public hearing, the school committee will reconvene under a separate Zoom link. So we close this Zoom link. You got two from Julia. There's another link. We go into that one for our continuation. We will discuss and hopefully approve the budget and a few other issues. The second meeting will also be open to the public, but public comments will not be allowed at that meeting. So any question on procedure of how we are going to run this meeting? Ford, did you have a question? You're on mute.
Julia, please send me the other link so I can also send it to Steve and Anthony. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we move to the presentation. Mr. Superintendent, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll get started with our FY25 superintendent's recommended budget. I want to thank Nikki Andre and for all her work pulling it together, as well as all of our staff members that participated in the budget process. We provided some guidelines which we wanted our staff members to bear in mind as they were putting together their recommendation. And they all came in exactly where we expected. So it just makes the budget process so much easier. It's getting our staff involved in the front end. Allows them to have the expectations of what they should see once we work our way through this budget process. And I appreciate all of their work, as I've always valued in my time during this time of year putting this together. So we'll start out by just pointing out a couple of changes. This is for the benefit of the school committee, but there were a couple of changes as a result of the governor's state budget that was released last week. And we did meet with the finance committee on the 25th to review the changes just to make sure they were current. But overall, there was a slight increase of about just over $16,000 in our Chapter 78. Part of that increase is attributed to the students that are in that were included in our post-secondary foundation enrollment, which basically are the students that are enrolled in the Minuteman Technical Institute. So there were funds of Chapter 70 funds of about $27,500 that we will be in this budget allocating towards the MTI program. We also received a minimum required contribution by town We made an estimate on what that minimum required contribution would be in prior versions of the budget. But once we get the revised versions that come from the state, we incorporate those. We incorporate the minimum contributions by each town, and as a result of that, that does change the member town assessments from what you saw on January 16th. I will also note that all of the town administrators and town manager were informed of the member assessments that are being proposed, and you'll see here tonight. You recall our overall member town assessments last week was at 0.88%, and as a result of these minor changes, it decreases slightly to 0.82%. So again, just trying to bear in mind who we serve and where our priorities ought to be when we're putting together the budgets. It's always about us, our students first, and supporting our faculty to make sure that they have the resources necessary to deliver the type of education that we do at Minuteman, both on as far as our academic rigor and as well as the experiences through the technical and vocational programs. So we talk about our goals, and we always start with this at the beginning of the year, and we do try and focus on our first goal, writing and literacy across the curriculum that's supported by the Universal Design for Learning. We also support our Minuteman staff and opportunities to collaborate on integration of in between academic and career technical education, core to part of the academy model that we've discussed in prior school committee meetings. And we also need to continue to strengthen our internal and external communication to support the student, staff, and families, the Minuteman community. So our overall recommendation for our operating and capital budget is $31,517,219, which is slightly under 4% over FY24. In terms of how that breaks down, the operating portion of that, $24,160,849, is 2.99% above fiscal 24. Capital recommendation is $1,660,000, which is 34% higher, which we'll talk about when we get to that in that section of the presentation. And the debt service related to the building project is up 1.3%. I would point out that 7 of the 9 member towns excluded that debt from their tax levy. So again, the total on member town assessments is $25,689,923, 0.82% above FY24. But I do need to point out that there were a couple of circumstances that contributed to the low increase in assessments this year. We'll point those out because it's important to note that it should not be expected that we'll be able to maintain assessments under 1% moving forward. So I just we'll be talking about that as well. So some of the budget drivers in our salary lines. In FY25, our collective bargaining agreement, we've settled at a 3.5% increase plus the steps and lanes in accordance to the contract. We did reduce 2 administrative positions, a reduction of the assistant director of CTE due to retirement, and a human resources position that we had budgeted, but we never ended up filling it as we restructured administratively, and that's been captured under the director of operations. We did bring back grant funded positions that were cut during COVID, the library aide, the health tech aide, and the co-op coordinator. I'll note when you look at the 3 positions we brought back compared to the on a budgetary basis compared to the 2 administrative reductions, it's a net savings of about $35,000 in salaries. We had to add a foreign language teacher this year based upon demand of the subject in our enrollment. And so we're continuing that funding. And then we've also seeking funding for an athletic trainer that will not only meet our requirements for MIA regulations and sporting events, but will also become an investment in our athletic program to support training, weight room management, and just general overall health and well-being of our student athletes. Other non-salary factors is that we did have an FY24 funding for curriculum development. We suspended some of that work as the transition in the superintendency position has evolved, but we've maintained that so that when the new superintendent starts on July 1, there will be funds available in the event the new superintendent would like to implement any ideas that she may be bringing forward. Bus transportation increased 5% pursuant to the consumer price index. That's under our contract. And we did add, in addition to the Tuesday and Thursday light buses, we're proposing a additional Wednesday light bus to allow our students to participate in more of the clubs that we offer, in after-school activities. We're hearing a demand from our students that they want to be more engaged in after-school campus life, and we felt as though this was a worthwhile recommendation to include. Our utilities, it's a decrease based on our FY26 actual uses after some doing an independent analysis and consulting with our energy consultant as well. As far as health insurance, we level funded FY25 because when we budgeted FY24, we anticipated a 10% increase. However, since in FY24, it turned out to be a 0 increase. We do have a surplus in FY24, and therefore we should be able to sustain somewhere around an 8.5% increase in health insurance if we simply level fund it from where it is this year. The last item on this list is our investment in cybersecurity. Our information technology director has been looking at this, engaged in a consultant to kind of take a look at our systems to just kind of test the resiliency and the security of the system. And we feel as though we need to make an investment to ensure to the best we can protection against any type of ransomware or any of that activity. Other non-salary drivers, the capital stabilization account. Last couple of years, we funded that at $500,000. This year, we're recommending an increase of $350,000 for a total of $850,000. This is part of the jump that we saw earlier on the capital assessment. If we were able to fund this at $850,000, this would allow us to reach a $3 million level of for our stabilization account. The need for building this is building this stabilization account, which we were unable to do in prior years, just because of some of the competing interests. But it'll allow us to really maximize any potential use of the campus that we've explored in terms of potential partnerships, and also to have, if we're able to move forward with any of those initiatives, it'll mitigate the need for future assessment increases. And we also need to be mindful that we have capital funds available in the event the existing campus and facility needs any type of capital improvements to it. So it's a responsible strategy. It's something that the rating agencies like to see when you have strong reserves, particularly in terms of capital. Debt service, just wanted to point out that the athletic fields portion of the debt service will not be assessed to member towns. This is the first year we're not assessing that piece of it because it'll be funded through the facilities revolving fund. And that's our intent moving forward, but that of course will depend on rental revenue that we earn each year. So that'll have to be reviewed each budget cycle. And then our OPEB, our other post-employment benefits, we are funding that 800 plus 40,000 based upon the recommendation of the OPEB study committee. So between that contribution, it's an 85% increase, $85,000 increase from FY24 in our active retiree health insurance of $525,000. So as we look at where we are on OPEB, our unfunded liability at 6/30/23 is about $23.7 million, and our current OPEB trust as of 12/31/23 was 869,000. So again, another one of those areas that we've been unable to fund on a consistent basis. But there is a long-term funding plan for OPEB, as you can see. And at FY25, we do have the 800,000 that's scheduled. And as we move off into 26, 27, 28, we will be a little bit more aggressive about funding that, which we should be able to do because we have an old ESCO lease that's dropping off after this fiscal year. And we'll just redirect that commitment of funds towards our OPEB. And this was based upon the OPEB study committee and their funding strategy. As you can see here, our enrollment is 686 students this fiscal year, of which 649 are member towns and 37 are non-member towns. And as you can see, we've seen a steady increase in our member town enrollment and a corresponding decrease to our non-member enrollment, which is the desire that the member towns wanted to see. And of course, we wanted to see more engagement from our member towns students, and we're pleased to show that. It's just over time now, we've been receiving a considerable amount of out-of-district tuition that we've been able to use to offset member assessments. We're starting to see with that reduction in revenue that's going to burden the member towns as a result of sending the students with, as it appropriately should be. And again, that's another driver that we'll talk about as we look at planning for future assessments. So Nikki, do you want to pick it up from here?
Absolutely. So this is the breakout of the 686 that Kevin had shown in the line graph. And this breakout is per town and each grade as well. So you can see the number of students and how that rolls into the 4-year rolling average. And as Kevin was mentioning, as our enrollment is shifting, the out-of-district revenue is decreasing, and those are set by the state, the tuition and the capital fee. So as a result, member towns will be responsible for more of the costs and soon all of the cost associated with the operating and capital budget due to this shift in enrollment. So here you'll be able to see visually what that looks like. The purple line across the top of this graph is the school design enrollment at 628, and that's our 85% capacity of the school. The tricolored bar graph includes our total member, non-member, and total enrollment compared to the 85% capacity. And as the graph shows, we are over that 85% capacity. And the yellow line added represents the non-member tuition, and the light blue line represents the capital fee revenue available to reduce member assessments. So as you can see, these are trending in the opposite direction and are unable to offset total member town assessments as they have in the past. this slide shows our FY25 budget, our preliminary assessments to the member towns. And you will see that there was a slight change to the allocation based on the changes from the governor's budget. In addition to the increase in the Chapter 78 of approximately 17,000, there was also a change in the minimum required contribution, which slightly affects the preliminary assessment per towns. As you can see here, our overall total member town assessment increase 0.082% over FY24, while our increase in our 4-year rolling average is 12.6%. So you will see here that our operating assessments are very strongly correlated with our 4-year rolling average, and our total member assessments this year is significantly lower than the increase in the 4-year average. And Kevin will speak to some of the impacts on this year's budget and why that is.
Yeah, so when we talk about our assessment being below 1%, there are some things that we need to point out so that member towns will be able to plan accordingly. And one of the things that we counted in when planning the FY25 budget is when we adopted the FY24 budget back a year ago from where we are tonight, we didn't have the benefit of the Chapter 70 state aid, so that when we planned for our budget, we were slightly below 800,000 what was actually allocated to Minuteman, which in effect means we got an $800,000 more than we had planned. I think if we had the benefit of knowing how much we were going to receive this time last year, we would have budgeted accordingly. And if you compare FY24 to FY25, you'll see that it would have an increase in what the assessment would be this year had we budgeted in accordance with what the Chapter 70 actually was. But we didn't have the benefit of the numbers, and we were on the low side of the estimate, and so we did receive 800,000 more than we anticipated. And to that end, it's the way it was budgeted. It's how it's reflected in this year's budget. We did work through with our member town managers, town administrators about how to use those excess funds in order to pay off some future anticipated debt for the MSBA. So we were able to commit it to a one-time expenditure that would save the member towns over $170,000 in future interest expense and reduce the need to raise the exempted debt levy by town. There's also, as we mentioned on a couple of occasions, a decline in the out-of-district tuition and capital fees. As that trend will continue on over the next 3 years, we should see a correlating member town assessment increase. So just want towns to be planning for that. And the other impact, as we talked about, was the athletic field debt service. It did decrease the FY25 member town assessment because we're implementing it for the first year. However, as that starts to be more a consistent annual contribution, we won't see the effect of that in future budget years.
So this slide will provide a little more detail to what Kevin was mentioning and how we've been talking about the shift in enrollment and the non-assessment revenue. You'll see here the decrease we're expecting if member town enrollment is to continue and freshman classes are to be made up of just member town students. The decrease in the anticipated revenue that will be able to offset those member assessments goes from approximately $840,000 to $380,000 down to $54,000. In tuition in our out-district capital fee goes from $283,000 to $110,000 to $15,000. So in the next 2 budget cycles, we will see more of this decrease until if the trend continues, all of our freshman classes being up of all member town students. In wrapping up our budget presentation, we'll just summarize here what we've gone over. Our operating budget, again, at 2.99%. Our capital equipment leases and athletic fields, that increased 34.1%, mainly due to our capital stabilization increase this year. Our total MSBA building project debt up 1.36% compared to last year, and that's tied out to our debt schedules, as well as a bit of anticipated interest in closing out the MSBA project in hopes this summer, with a total operating capital budget of just under 4%. This slide shows a breakout here of our non-assessment revenue. Again, our Chapter 70 aid, which we have updated to reflect the governor's budget at 2.99. The increase, again, looks significant compared to last year's estimated budget. However, if you compare it to what we actually received, as Kevin was mentioning, it's more consistent than it looks on this sheet. Our Chapter 71 estimate, has increased, due to the increase in our transportation costs and the additional 3:30 p.m. bus. And you'll see our prior year tuition is used, as we've mentioned, and our prior year non-resident capital fee. So again, those we do anticipate to decrease over the next 2 years because of the enrollment trend. We use $650,000 each year from our excess and deficiency fund to offset member town assessments. And this year you will also see our facilities rental revenue, as Kevin mentioned. This is new this year, but depending on rental revenue, we do plan to use this fund of the facilities rentals to offset the debt in relation to the athletic fields for those member towns. Again, summarizing our total required member town assessments increase at 0.82%. Lastly is a breakout of our member required contribution. Again, this was updated based on the governor's budget that was released on January 24th. Our transportation budget, again, really strongly tied just to our NRT transportation and the transportation of our students, the 5% increase in the additional day of the bus. Our ESCO lease is ending this year in FY25, so you'll see this assessment go away in the future, where, as Kevin mentioned, we can utilize some of those funds to increase our OPEB contributions each year. Our capital equipment line, again, a strong increase due to the capital stabilization increase this year, and assessments over minimum contribution decreasing 14%. With our building project debt, just over 3% in total, with our total member assessments, 25,689,923 at a 0.2% increase over last year. Those are the components you'll see in the budget book, which is posted to our website as well and distributed. And we are happy to answer any questions that you should have.
So the public should go on, turn on their video and wave as necessary. You'll be called on as needed by the superintendent. If you are called on, please mention your name, your community, and any official status you may have, and then ask your question. So are there any questions?
I see Eric from Lexington has a question. Hi, Eric.
Hey, good evening. Thank you very much. I'm Eric Michelson. I'm for Lexington on the Appropriations Committee. My question is, looks like you had favorable revenue or lack of expenses due to insurance, health insurance being over budgeted, and also you had favorable revenue due to Chapter 78 in the prior year. So how does that affect your E&D balance going forward?
There's a couple of things on that, Eric. The first one is, and I only touched on it, but it's worth elaborating on a bit. But we're still issuing temporary bond anticipation notes on the last piece of our school building project. We have about $2.8 million outstanding that we just renewed until June. And we're expecting about $2.2 million of reimbursement from MSBA when we finally close out the project. So that leaves a gap of about 600,000 we're estimating, plus interest. So with the Chapter 70 money, we will be sending out a letter to our member towns seeking authorization to expend E&D funds, which in effect this would become as we close out the end of the year, to pay off that 600 and some odd $1,000 balance to the building project, so that it'll avoid having to finance that last piece over 3 or 4 years and incur additional future borrowing costs. So a lot of what will happen with that excess funding in FY24, most of it will be used as part of the payoff for the building project, and the other 200,000 based upon circumstances as we go towards closing out the fiscal year. I'd likely recommend putting it into the stabilization fund again to try and provide a good reserve in the event we have an opportunity to do something with that. Nikki, do you want to talk about the impact the health insurance surplus may have?
Yeah, we're certainly, watching it. We present quarterly reports to our finance committee, and that's certainly something that we can discuss. But as Kevin mentioned, we may, seeing as there may be any excess, propose a transfer. Health insurance is one of those things that kind of depends on the employees. So when we budget our health insurance, we budget based on the actual employees when we create the budget, so around November, December. As you know, new employees may get hired as others retire. So depending on if they have a single health insurance or a family health insurance, those certainly fluctuate. So it's something that we'll track through, certainly through the third quarter, and work with our finance committee to have a recommendation on.
One more question, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, so what is the mechanism for taking the 200,000 from E&D and putting it towards capital stabilization? Is that an internal school committee thing, or does that go out to the towns again?
No, you'll receive a letter. We'll be going before the school committee at the April school committee meeting. And what we'll be doing is we're asking the school committee to increase the budget by, say, $800,000. And the source of funds of that would be certified excess and deficiency money. And by increasing that 800,000, we'll use that to expend against reducing that debt, as well as moving the funds into the stabilization account. And it won't affect assessments since we're offsetting that with the use of the E&D money.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good work.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I do not see any additional questions at the public hearing.
Very good. Then I'm going to ask, Sharon, you are here with us. Can you hear us, Sharon? Okay. So I think that during the break, it would be good for Julia to try to contact Sharon and Sarah and see if they're having any concerns.
No, I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay, very good. Then just Sarah. And I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting, and then we will reconvene in a minute or two at our next link in the email that Julia sent that described this meeting and it had the agendas. There were 2 links, one for this meeting and one for the continuation, in which the school committee is going to take up the budget It's going to hopefully vote on the budget, and we have a few more topics, as you know, that are very important moving forward.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I think we
Steve.
have to vote to close the public hearing as well.
We have to
before
vote to close the public hearing and adjourn the meeting. So I would like a motion to do both, to adjourn the
So
public
moved.
hearing and this meeting, and
So moved.
got to move. Do I have a, very good. Any discussion? No. Roll call vote. Pam.
Pam Nurse Acton, yes.
Erica Elsie Bolton, yes.
Steve Ledoux, Concord, yes.
Ford Spalding Dover, yes.
Darlene Cabral Lancaster, yes.
Sharon Lester Lexington, yes.
Jeff Stula Needham, yes.
Alice Lucas Stowe, yes.
See y'all in a few minutes.